In this video, we're going to be talking about the ASKRTRIO's new weapon upgrades. With Update 2.8, ALFONSE, SHARENA, and ANNA get to join in on the fun of the weapon refinery, and you will be able to spend Divine Dew to upgrade their unique legendary weapons. This video will talk about each of these units individually, and I'll be taking a closer look at each specific weapon. We'll discuss positives and negatives for each weapon, and I'll also be talking about some builds that both capitalize on each weapon's strengths, or help patch up some glaring weaknesses for our units themselves. Skip around with timestamps if you want. This is going to be a long one. I guess we should discuss if upgrading the ASKRTRIO to 5 stars is even worth it because, well, you can't access their legendary weapons if you don't spend some feathers on them. First off, ALFONSE, SHARENA, and ANNA are all used quite often for many various types of quests, so having them at 5 stars at least gives them their full stat potential. Second, the ASKRTRIO plus Fjorm are on rotation as arena bonus units, so if you don't have any of the other bonus units to build up, then investing in the ASKRTRIO is a nice fallback. Keep in mind the arena stat boost of plus 10 HP and plus 4 to attack, speed, defense, and resistance makes all these starters a lot more usable. The last point is that we are probably stuck with ALFONSE, SHARENA, and ANNA for the rest of the game anyways, so instead of dreading using them, why not make them better units? Basically, I do think the ASKRTRIO are worth 5 starring at this point in the game, and it's a lot easier to accumulate 20,000 feathers versus the first year of the game. So starting off with our favorite benchlord ALFONSE, you might want to start paying him a little more respect after he gets his new Folkvangr. Important to note that for the base version for each weapon, you will need to spend 200 Divine Dew to get these updated effects. For Folkvangr, its new base effect is that at the start of combat, if ALFONSE is below 80% HP, he gets plus 7 attack and defense during combat. This is the same as BRAZEN attack and defense 3, and it replaces the old Defiant attack 2 effect. So this is a huge buff for the base effect. Since BRAZEN effects are combat buffs, they can stack, and that means ALFONSE can stack his weapons effect with a combat boosting A skill, and he can then receive a field buff from his allies. Moving on to the special refined upgrade for Folkvangr, you get the effects of Triangle Adept. ALFONSE will gain an insane advantage when fighting green units and will get absolutely destroyed if he fights blue units. We've talked about Triangle Adept recently and its double-edged nature, but it can still be a good upgrade depending on the role you want ALFONSE to take. So is the new Folkvangr good or bad? Well, first off, considering the base Folkvangr's effect that you get with any upgrade, it's probably one of the strongest buffs to a weapon since they've started retooling legendary weapons. Now the immediate reaction from everyone was that you should stack the BRAZEN attack and defense 3 effect from Folkvangr with another BRAZEN attack and defense 3 in the A slot. ALFONSE would get plus 14 attack and defense when under 80% HP, and this isn't too crazy of a skill inherent in his leap since Ares is at least in the 4-star summoning pool with this skill. As for the Triangle Adept upgrade, it's gotten a lot of flack and many have considered just choosing a stat refine instead of this special upgrade. The positives of Triangle Adept is that ALFONSE just boosts his damage through the roof versus green units, opening up more one-shot possibilities, and it also helps him have a chance against green magical threats like dragons or mages. Triangle Adept builds scale really well with a lot of attack, which ALFONSE happens to have, so it isn't that bad all things considered. Avoiding blue units should already be priority number 1 for ALFONSE in the first place, although by stacking the attack and defense boost from BRAZEN type skills, and taking a defense refined Folkvangr, you can argue that is enough to push past the weapon Triangle's penalties. The Triangle Adept special upgrade is definitely not going to be a required choice to make ALFONSE good. One of the many problems with the double BRAZEN idea and just a single BRAZEN skill in general is how do we get ALFONSE into the less than 80% HP threshold for BRAZEN activation in the first place. Besides axe enemies, ALFONSE has a tough time surviving against a lot of other threats, and instead of ending up with less than 80% HP, he may just end up dead. Also, the Triangle Adept upgrade doesn't exactly help us solve this issue, and since it makes ALFONSE tankier against green units, he may not even take enough damage to activate the BRAZEN effect. It does depend, however, since ALFONSE may now survive green magical attacks instead of dying. There are a ton of possible scenarios, but let's look at a few ways to get ALFONSE rolling. There are a few ways to get ALFONSE into BRAZEN HP range, or just lowish HP in general. Fury is a pretty consistent way to eventually make sure a unit ends up on low HP. The extra stats are great and can lead to surviving certain matchups. The recoil damage cannot kill ALFONSE, but with Folkvangr adding extra defense, the continuous chip damage from Fury may not be ideal, especially if you want ALFONSE to fight multiple times. Another skill you can use is Swordbreaker since it helps control engagements with super fast hyper offensive sword users like Carla or Ira. It also has a good usage for the player phase or the enemy phase. If you want a method that avoids combat, then you can use the Reciprocal Aid or Ardent Sacrifice assist skills. The effectiveness of these skills do come down to how the rest of your team performs and does require a bit of team synergy. Other ways to save ALFONSE can be the deflect skills since ALFONSE will be getting doubled a lot. It's not great on the enemy phase without Vantage, but it can be an interesting option. Now the most consistent way to make sure ALFONSE survives is to just increase his own stats. A defense refined Folkvangr adds plus 5 HP and plus 4 defense, which is great, and ALFONSE can use skills like close defense to bump that defense even higher. Usually I do not consider the arena stat boost or summoner support boost when building a unit. However, ALFONSE, Ana, and SHARENA all rotate as bonus units, meaning you can plan builds around the extra stat boost if you want. As for summoner support, it's a huge grind to get, but I think it can be worth it for the ASKRTRIO. But a few ideas on how to get ALFONSE rolling with Folkvangr, what skills synergize with that brazen attack and defense effect. First off is the obvious double stacking brazen attack and defense in the A slot. If ALFONSE reaches less than 80% HP, he will get plus 14 attack and defense, which is insane and is very impressive. The drawback is that ALFONSE has a weak start since brazen skills do nothing when at full HP. One way to smoothen out ALFONSE's early game is to add quick riposte to your build. It lacks synergy with the brazen skills, but ALFONSE can get some first round knockout power before entering brazen status. Speaking of brazen status, Wrath has a very close HP threshold at 75% HP versus 80% HP. ALFONSE may not charge specials fast since he can't double often, but Wrath makes sure he hits hard when he can proc them. The extra cooldown reduction is also nice, and the idea of staying on lowish HP is what you want to do with both brazen skills and Wrath. Now a great complement for once ALFONSE is in the thick of things is attack smoke or defense smoke if you have it. By debuffing surrounding enemies, ALFONSE can either become even tankier with attack smoke or he can dish out more damage with defense smoke. Even though it's quite rare, maybe defense smoke will be easier to get in the future, and once it is more attainable, it pairs nicely with Vantage. If Vantage is active, then brazen skills are active, and Vantage is all about getting one-shot counterattacks. With ALFONSE getting more attack from Folkvangr and his skills, Vantage is a really nice defensive tool and is quite deadly if ALFONSE has his special primed. Finally, let's talk about Brash Assault. Brazen attack and defense is the perfect skill for Brash Assault. It grants the most amount of bonus attack, and the extra defense means ALFONSE can tank the enemy a counter before finishing them off with the second attack. The hardest part about Brash Assault is getting to the less than 50% HP threshold, but doing so gives ALFONSE some decent player phase potential. It's stronger when comboed with Desperation, but I actually don't think it's a necessity for once. With all these skills in mind, let's create some builds for the new Folkvangr. First off, Triangle Adept Special Upgrade is probably not going to be the most chosen upgrade. That doesn't mean it's bad, and there are a few ways to make ALFONSE a monster green enemy counter. To get the most out of a Triangle Adept weapon, I do think Distant Counter is a great choice because it lets melee units deal with mages, and well, I guess it also now lets them deal with colored bows and colored daggers. A lot of Triangle Adept builds like to cover certain matchups for a team, so Swordbreaker is a common option for red units like ALFONSE. As we mentioned, it can also help him get into Folkvangr's Brazen range while saving him from speedy sword enemies. Unfortunately, ALFONSE's low speed does kinda suck, and he may not be able to one-shot tanky green units like Hector, which is why Quick Repose is a good way to handle those type of threats. Without Distant Counter, you can stick with ALFONSE's natural Death Blow A skill, but being able to counter ranged green units is the best perk of Distant Counter and the Triangle Adept Refine. The other skills that I've replaced with the lighter yellow color are just other options I think can work, and do feel free to mix and match them. It's always fun to add your own flair to a build, even if the overall idea is the same. This next build is something I think is much safer since we are fully investing in ALFONSE's enemy phase. Refine Folkvangr with extra defense and add the pretty common combination of Steady Breath, Quick Riposte, and a close defense Sacred Seal. Use attack smoke to debuff multiple threats, and if ALFONSE gets knocked low on HP, Folkvangr's Brazen effect kicks in for added defense. Now you can use Ignis here for a huge bomb that should proc thanks to Quick Riposte, but you may also want to try Moonbow. Once ALFONSE gets knocked out of Quick Riposte range, he won't be able to get one round Ignis procs, but he could still get one round Moonbow procs with Steady Breath always working on the enemy phase. That's not all you may want to change since there is a riskier but more offensive tweak to this build. You can scrap close defense in exchange for Brash Assault. Losing 6 defense is kind of a lot, so I really only recommend doing this if you use ALFONSE with the arena stat boost. For even more insurance, add summoner support and maybe even more team buffs on top of all of this. With the arena boost and summoner support, ALFONSE gets an extra plus 15 HP and plus 6 to all other stats, which easily bulks him up enough to run a more riskier option like Brash Assault. I still think Brash Assault is risky because of the HP requirement being so low, but it can give ALFONSE a second wind once Quick Riposte stops. Last, the main attraction of the new Folkvangr, let's discuss double Brazen attack and defense builds. I would like to address this first idea of pairing double Brazen skills with the slightly memey Desperation plus Brash Assault combo. This full build is incredibly hard to set up because there are 0 skills here that help ALFONSE on his first round of combat. To get around having ALFONSE survive a fight, you can use Reciprocal Aid here. It's definitely not a foolproof plan, but if you can pair ALFONSE with someone who has extremely low HP and can lower it somehow, then maybe you can consistently get into Brash Assault range. Now the payoff for this build is insane, with ALFONSE reaching 65 attack with double Brazen attack active. That's with no arena stat boost, no summoner support, and no ally buffs. That number can easily reach into the 70s, and ALFONSE is going to be rocking 50 defense if you choose the defense refined Folkvangr. As I mentioned, with all the extra defense from the Brazen skills, you may not even need Desperation if ALFONSE can just straight up tank the enemy's counterattack. Again, adding summoner support or the arena bonus really helps out with their massive HP boost. So if you don't need Desperation, then you can try out Vanish for a better enemy phase. With 60 plus attack, ALFONSE will have a hefty Vanish hit, and again, Defense Smoke is nice in situations where he has to tackle multiple enemies. Now, skills that definitely would be crazy for ALFONSE is Heavy Blade, but unfortunately, it's tough to fit in on some of these builds. Maybe if you had Infantry Rush, which provides Heavy Blade to allies, then you can set up some crazy special procs for ALFONSE. Gale Force might be an option at this point, but I normally wouldn't use it. With the new Folkvangr, ALFONSE has a lot of new fun builds to try out, and let me know what your favorite is in the comments. Let's now move on to Sharena, who wields Fensalir. Similar to Folkvangr, Fensalir got its older effect removed for a new one. It now neutralizes enemy bonuses from skills like Fortify or Rally during combat. Basically, it neutralizes field buffs. It combines Dull Range 3 and Dull Close 3 to work against all unit types. It is actually just a straight upgrade over Level Bound's Eliwood's, Casablanca plus Lance, and the Divine Naga Tome has the same buff neutralization effect. Being able to neutralize field buffs is actually pretty decent, and they are commonly seen in all stages of the game. Being able to stop powerful emblem team buffs is great, but it does kind of become a useless effect when Sharena's enemy doesn't have any field buffs on them. I would think of it more like a safety net for situations where you don't have to worry about enemies with tons of buffs overpowering Sharena. It's a good defensive effect, since if you need Sharena to bait an enemy that is getting buffed by their teammates, she can shut down those buffs, but the enemy AI will still attack her. Now for Fensalir's special upgrade, for 200 Divine Dew, it gets the same effect as Speed and Defense Bond 3. That is, if Sharena is next to an any ally, she gets plus 5 speed and defense during combat. This is actually pretty darn good, especially since it boosts her average 32 speed and 29 defense into a much more comfortable zone. As mentioned, the buff neutralization effect is best used for defensively baiting in enemies, and as such, Sharena can easily be positioned next to an ally. So in essence, Fensalir's base effect and its special upgrade both have some synergy. So is the new Fensalir good or bad? Regarding the new base effect that neutralizes enemy field buffs, I do think it's a very annoying skill for the enemy to deal with. When the player uses Sharena, you can bait in the enemy AI, which won't realize it's losing its buffs, and when you have to face Sharena, well, if you depend on field buffs, then she can be an annoying opponent. Since the neutralizing effect is only taking effect during the damage calculations, it's not super noticeable. You kinda have to keep track of the stats in your head. While it may not seem that great of an effect, I assure you nullifying field buffs is pretty useful. That being said, this effect alone can be underwhelming if the enemy Sharena fights doesn't have any field buffs, so it's a good thing we can refine Fensalir to get another effect. The Speed and Defense Bond special refine is actually decent for Sharena since it pairs well with a more defensive playstyle, and neutralizing field buffs helps Sharena keep things on an even playing field. Assuming just base 5-star stats, Sharena will hit 37 speed and 34 defense, both of which are respectable. While this isn't a huge game changer, I do think it's the best refine option for Fensalir. The speed and defense refine individually aren't as effective in exchange for making sure Sharena is just next to an ally. An issue that Sharena used to suffer from was that her stats were too balanced across the board, and she sort of just fell in a huge group of infantry lance units. The base effect for Fensalir does give her some niche neutralizing buffs, but it only shines depending on the enemy team. The speed and defense bond upgrade is good for boosting 2 of Sharena's better stats, but she still will have to compete with other lance users like Shiro or Nephany. While Fensalir doesn't really make Sharena stand out, it's still a decent weapon. To help Sharena out, we'll try to focus on improving her combat effectiveness overall, or we can focus on giving her some extra utility for the team. Since Fensalir doesn't push Sharena to specialize in a certain playstyle and her stats are all around pretty average, there are skills that just boost the general effectiveness of a unit so they can do decently against all types of matchups. Since Fensalir already gives Speed and Defense Bond 3 as an upgrade, it makes a lot of sense to add another bond type skill in the 8th slot. These are combat buffs, so they will stack with each other. I personally think Sharena should use a bond skill that has speed involved, since plus 10 speed in total from just 2 skills is great. I think attack and speed bond or another speed and defense bond are both the way to go. Attack and defense bond is another option. To make sure Sharena can stay in combat longer, Renewal 3 is a good B skill that you can't really go wrong with. The plus 10 HP every other turn can add up, and it can make the difference if Sharena gets into multiple fights. Another good B skill option is Sword Breaker or Lance Breaker. These provide Sharena with a good row to counter sword or lance units, and Triangle Depth is an option if you really want to specialize. Since Sharena is a lot better being on defense, Steady Breath is a good choice for cooldown reduction and some extra defense. If you buff up Sharena's speed enough, she can probably work just fine without needing to use quick riposte. Now, since Sharena may not have a clearly defined role for the team, she can make use of multiple buffing skills to aid her teammates. As a big fan of Ephraim and Erica, I like that they can provide attack and speed buffs to anybody I pair them with. Sharena can sort of follow that same idea where if you are just trying to make her a good unit and a good teammate, then buffing skills in the C slot and Sacred Seal slot plus rally assist skills are an option to fill out a build. Last, I am again going to advocate thinking about a build that works around the arena stat boost for bonus units as well as summoners supporting Sharena. This is relevant for all 3 Askr units since they can be your only option as the arena bonus unit. It's also something to think about if you want them to score multiple kills to get the extra points with the recent change to arena. Moving on to some utility skills, we can try to follow in the footsteps of Fensalir and just be as annoying as possible for the enemy. Since we are already neutralizing their field buffs, why not add Guard to the mix to neutralize their special buildup? Guard is very effective these days with all the various ways to get extra special charge, and with Sharena's balanced stats, it's not a bad B skill option. Another annoying B skill for Sharena to use are the chill type skills. Chill defense, chill speed, and chill attack are gonna help Sharena out the most, and it can benefit her teammates. That global debuff is extremely annoying, and if they become Sacred Seals, then double chill skill builds are sure to exist. A third option this time in the C slot can be Panic Ploy. Now it may seem redundant, but Fensalir only neutralizes field buffs while Panic Ploy reverses them into terrible negative buffs. Think of Panic Ploy as the best possible outcome, but Fensalir is a nice backup plan for when you can't line Sharena up correctly or when she gets too low on HP. Speaking of HP, this is one of those skills where you probably want the extra HP from arena or summoner support. Another annoying skill is Wings of Mercy, and this has the added bonus of synergizing with Fensalir's bond type skill. Last, since Fensalir's playstyle is more common with defensive builds, adding close defense or distant defense is a great way to cover against any general threats. Both of these skills are really just good on any unit, and Sharena can make good use of them with her decent speed stat. Staying alive and annoying the enemy is something Sharena can definitely do. As for builds, we can go for a very simple build centered around Sharena either helping her allies or getting bonus stats from bond type skills. Fensalir's special upgrade is probably going to be the best choice, and adding more stats to Sharena just helps her out in her matchups. As mentioned, the B skill is pretty wide open for anything you want: Renewal, Lancebreaker, Vantage, etc. To round out everything, giving Sharena buffing skills just means she can be useful to any team you put her in. Again, there is no real set pattern of buffs, but attack and speed buffs are always appreciated, so they are a safe option. You have a ton of variations to choose from: Hone, Fortify, Tactic, Wave, and whatever comes on later. Here are some more options to choose from. Double Spurs can be pretty good in my opinion and are at least obtainable from more common units. Attack and Speed Bond helps Sharena's offenses more, and Wings of Mercy lets her come to any ally's rescue. Any stat booster like Fury, Darting Blow, or Death Blow can be alternative A skills, but I do think the bond type skills work best with the new Fensalir. This next build revolves around Sharena being the fun police and creating a no fun zone by shutting down the enemy's buffs and their specials. This is a more defensive setup, and we want Sharena to be baiting in threats. Steady Breath and Quick Riposte are both nice complements, but can be substituted. Should be noted that Guard, Panic Ploy, and Quick Riposte all rely on having high HP, so they are probably best used with someone who can heal Sharena. You could substitute Chill skills, Smoke skills, and Close defense since these do not rely on having high HP to activate. Feel free to mix and match. The whole point is to just be the most annoying threat for the enemy. Overall, Sharena has a decent stat line for melee combat, and while it doesn't make her super unique, she can be an effective unit. The new Fensalir is definitely a good pickup for Sharena, and I think the speed and defense bond special upgrade is a nice buff to her combat abilities. We've made it to our last starting unit, Commander Ana. One thing that Ana has always had going for her was her amazing speed stat of 38 base speed. She has actually been the fastest axe unit since the start of the game, if you don't count Nature's, and that is incredibly impressive. Her high speed really helps her out, and it offsets the fact that NOATUN only has mobility skills. Unlike Folkvangr or Fensalir, Ana's NOATUN actually keeps this original effect. If Ana's HP is 50% or less, she can move to any adjacent space next to any ally, and this is essentially Escape Route 3. This is a minor buff from the original effect, which was the Escape Route 2. This isn't that bad of an ability because mobility is quite strong in Fire Emblem Heroes, and once Ana got on low HP, she is able to teleport all over the place. As such, a popular build for Ana was Fury plus Desperation. Fury got her to low HP, and Desperation lets her teleport around and finish off enemies with 2 hits. If you upgrade NOATUN to its Special Refine for 200 Divine Dew, then when Ana is above 50% HP, she can move to a space adjacent to any ally within 2 spaces. Now this effect does not have a skill named after it, but we have seen it on a few other units. For one, this is the exact same upgrade as Takumi's Fujin Yumi bow. It's also the same as Holloway Noe's Grim Tome. I suppose its closest skill equivalent is Zelgius's Warp Powder B skill, but that has a higher HP threshold. The ability to move around teammates is nice and can lead to some cool strategies when combined with movement assist skills. Let's ask for the last time, is NOATUN good or bad? For the base version of NOATUN, it's going to perform pretty much the exact same as before. If you like the escape route effect, then it's just easier to proc. Since Ana has a pretty low defense stat, she takes quite a bit of damage. With escape route, she can get out of dangerous situations, or she can teleport across the map to make an offensive play with skills like Desperation. The major downfall is that Ana needs to get below 50% HP before the base effect activates. For the mobility/teleporting upgrade, it's going to be really hit or miss with players. Messing around with mobility skills is a lot of fun and can introduce new strategies depending on what other skills you give to Ana. Mobility is however dictated by the map's terrain, and that can be an issue if you don't have a lot of room to move units around. While it's a fun effect, some maps will restrict the number of options you have to make. Now the major problem with NOATUN and its upgrade is that it just grants 0 in combat effects. Sure, it's really nice to be able to move around anywhere, but if Ana isn't able to kill stuff, then that is an issue. I think with the right skills, Ana with the specially refined NOATUN can play a very interesting role as a commander darting around the battlefield. The issue with some of these skills that I'm going to mention is that they are not very easy to get, and I don't know when they will be easier to get. Mobility is cool, but if you want to improve Ana's matchups, then NOATUN is not going to be the answer. So let's talk about skills that I think complement NOATUN's mobility upgrade. Before we discuss the passive skills, let's talk about movement assist skills and rally skills. These pair well with the new NOATUN because Ana is going to be able to move to any side of any ally within 2 spaces. That means she has a ton of options to use movement skills in any direction. For example, Ana can move in front of someone and reposition them forward close to the fight. With swap, she can swap them left, right, front, or back, and that can be useful on smaller type maps. I also think shove and smite have their uses, but their effectiveness really comes down to the map terrain and your ability to craft tricky tactics. As for pivot, I think it can have a place for the new link type skills, and rally skills can be used with the new feint type skills. For those unfamiliar, the link and feint line of skills are relatively new. Both go in the B slot, with the link skills buffing up your units and the feint skills debuffing enemies in a line. Starting with the link skills, you need to first use a movement assist skill on an ally. Then both the unit and the ally gets +6 field buffs for the 2 stats of the skill. With upgraded NOATUN, Ana can use swap or pivot to buff her teammates safely, and I know it's kinda hard to imagine how this works without seeing a visual example. Sadly, I don't have access to these skills since they are hard to get. The same goes for the feint skills. They are activated when a unit is involved in a rally skill use. Again, kinda hard to explain. Once a rally skill is used, the unit with the feint skill emits a debuff in a line similar to a ploy type skill. With NOATUN, Ana can more easily choose her position and then use a rally skill. Now I think the link and feint type skills have good potential with NOATUN, but 3 out of 4 of these skills are literally on unavailable limited time units. Sadly, until they are easier to get, I don't expect anyone to actually give them to Ana. One line of skills that are at least feasible to get are the ploy type skills, and since they are all about positioning, NOATUN with its 2 mobility effects can be useful. Ana's base res of 28 is also not that bad, but you probably want to improve it in some way if you do use ploy skills. Now let's discuss ways to help Ana increase her combat power, because a base attack of 29 is slightly below average, but it's not so bad when paired with her great speed stat. So first off, if you do not care about the mobility upgrade for NOATUN, then the speed refined option is a good choice. Ana will then have 41 speed, which is a great cushion for trying out build options that aren't Fury 3. Despite what I just said, Fury 3 plus Desperation is Ana's old bread and butter combo. This was a popular build for Ana already, and regular NOATUN synergizes really well with these skills because Ana can teleport around the map to get 2 hits off with Desperation. It's a good counter for Ana's low defense stat. Now since Ana depends on her teammates for her mobility, it's nice that she's on a team with units who carry Spirit or Drive type skills. It's not a crime to get a little bit of help from the team, but it does come down to how you team build in the first place. Now some new skills Ana can try out include Brazen Attack and Speed. This is a riskier option than Fury 3, but when paired with Desperation, Ana's offensive power will be higher. She gets 4 extra attack and speed compared to Fury, which both helps with her Desperation procs. With her high starting speed, Ana should be able to avoid falls from most units, and her defense stat isn't that low that she'll get one shot by everything. I think Brazen Attack and Speed is a viable option. Another stat booster is the bond type skills. Since NOATUN puts Ana adjacent to an ally, she should always get the stats from the bond skills. I think attack and speed bond or attack and defense bond are decent options, with the priority just being more on attack. Last is probably Ana's new favorite Sacred Seal. Flashing Blade is obviously going to be a good choice for the fastest axe user in the game, and Ana definitely needs special procs to finish off tougher enemies. You can put it in the A slot, but I think Ana needs that slot for a stat boosting skill of some kind. Moving on to builds, we will first use the mobility upgraded NOATUN to make Ana a supportive roaming commander. Use movement assist skills like swap to activate the link type skills, and also add spur type skills to further buff up allies. Ana's A slot is open for a stat boosting skill like attack and speed bond or fury 3, so she should still be able to fight effectively. If you use the feint skills, then use a rally skill to activate them, and make sure you line Ana up in the correct spot to debuff the enemy. You can run ploy skills here too, but definitely find a way to increase Ana's resistance a tad bit, either with fury or by depending on the arena stat boost. Unfortunately, due to the limited availability of the link and feint skills, I don't really see this type of build becoming popular just yet. I think they can make for some cool builds, but without an easier way to get them, not enough people are going to get the chance to play with them. For those of you who just want to focus on fighting, then definitely go for the speed refined NOATUN or even the attack version. I also highly recommend Desperation. It's not the only option, but I think it just pairs well with a low HP sweeper like Ana. Now adding Flashing Blade to Desperation builds means Ana will be able to proc a 2-turn special like Moonbow on the second hit of the Desperation attack. If she gets below 50% HP thanks to Fury, then she can teleport around with NOATUN to use this combo to finish off enemies. You can also fit Brazen attack and speed here, it might just be harder to get on low HP safely. That being said, it does grant more attack and speed than Fury if you can pull it off. Now an interesting special you can give Ana is Gale Force, and even though Ana might need extra damage against certain enemies, the plays you can make with Gale Force is pretty insane. With Flashing Blade, if Ana attacks a melee enemy twice, she will have Gale Force ready. If she were to get below 50% HP during that fight, then after Gale Force refreshes her turn, she can use NOATUN to escape or KO another enemy across the map. The downfall of this is that after the first Gale Force proc, Ana can't get it back in one round, assuming you use Desperation to KO the enemy without their retaliation. This problem can be solved if you give Ana a Sling Axe instead, but you will lose the escape route effect, which might be an issue. Unfortunately for Ana, a lot of players drop NOATUN for a Sling Axe, and it might be worth the change if you don't think the escape route effect is useful. That is the thing with utility skills, they can shine in specific instances, but you can't deny the pure combat effectiveness of something like special cooldown reduction. NOATUN is an interesting weapon, but it has stiff competition if you want Ana to have more power in combat. That wraps up this video about using the ASKRTRIO's new weapons. A few weeks ago I challenged you guys to show me your best builds for ALFONSE, SHARENA, and Ana prior to them getting their new weapon upgrades. I've got a ton of responses and I can't show all of them, but do know I appreciate every single one of you who submitted an entry. This video was only focused on Folkvangr, Fensalir, and NOATUN, but if they don't fit your fancy, you can easily find another option. As some of these builds showcase, you can have a ton of alternate weapons to choose from with different builds to go with them. Like for ALFONSE, you could definitely go with the Safeguard Sword, or you can have fun with a Brave Sword. Fire Emblem Heroes lets the players be creative, and it's fun to deviate from the norm, especially if you invest a lot of resources. With that said, now that update 2.8 is out, feel free to share any of your new builds with the new Folkvangr, Fensalir, and NOATUN. This video encapsulated my personal thoughts and feelings for each new weapon, but you may feel differently and that's perfectly fine. I actually really like ALFONSE's new weapon, and I've already completed my arena run for the week using him with a defense refined Folkvangr. Now throughout this video I mentioned summoner support and the arena stat boost a bit. With both of these, the ASKRTRIO are a lot of fun to use, and I'd like to share something I've discovered about summoner support for the ASKRTRIO specifically. That will hopefully be its own video coming out soon. Sorry for the delay on this video, but it went through a lot of changes. Hope you guys enjoyed this longer than usual episode, and I'll see you in the next one.